whatever you choose to pursue is a little bit of audacity, which is inconsistent with traditional intelligence as it relates to book smarts and repetition, because you would look at the statistics and say, that's unlikely that would work, and therefore I won't do it. Everything is up for disruption. It's likely to be the biggest change of how we live in history. With more time spent on screens, more time with AI, human-centric experiences become ever more valuable. Business in that sense is a spiritual experience, it's a growth experience, because you have to evolve as a person to be capable of bringing in and holding and nurturing the vision that you've set out to achieve.
Hi, I'm Caroline Carey and welcome to the Eat Nourish Love podcast. For over 20 years, I've created events, raised over 4 million for good causes, and been lucky enough to meet some incredible people along the way. This podcast is about exploring stories and insights that really shape us, with inspiring guests from wellness, business, self-care and personal growth. It's about learning to trust our intuition and discovering what truly matters, and how, with hard work, belief and tenacity, we can make so many things happen. Welcome to the Eat Nourish Love podcast this week. I'm really excited to be welcoming someone called Louie Blake, who actually I came across because I was listening to something on social media, and his new enterprise is so exciting. Louie, you've done many things. You left school at 16, you set up businesses, you set up vegan restaurants, and then you had COVID hit you. You're now doing this amazing project. You're also an ultra athlete, and you do it very quietly, raising lots of money for charity. So welcome to our podcast this morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to chat to you.
So, Lou, actually, on your podcast, one of the questions you asked, I think you did it to Johnny Wilkinson, who are you? Without telling you your story or what you do, etc. Can I ask you that question?
I am the awareness of what it currently is, and that is the only constant. Everything else is in flux and ever changing.
So that goes back to the truth of mindfulness and being in the moment and being in the flow, isn't it? It's just awareness of where you are.
I think most of our suffering comes from identification with a temporary feeling or anything temporary for that matter, or trying to hold on to anything that is temporary as everything else is. So that's actually really comforting, I think, to come back into that state of just recognizing that awareness is the only constant. It means we can fully experience everything that there is to experience.
Do you know, it's funny because people talk about thoughts, and there's a lovely girl on who I've watched before, and she speeds along on her scooter and doing her social media, and she said that often this voice, who is that other person in your head, that other voice in your head that can take you off track? And she said one of the best things you can do is name it. And I thought that was really clever, because actually, when your awareness and the thoughts that come in and all the stuff that takes you away from where you are at that moment, is that thought, that person, that second voice in your head.
I think very, very often it comes from trying to exert control over the external reality. And we do that because we want certainty. We crave certainty. The thought of possibility is great when we're in a positive state and we can expect great things for ourselves, but it's equally terrifying when we're potentially in a more lower vibrational state and we're predicting bad things for ourselves, which is much easier to slip into sometimes, especially if we're susceptible to the powers that seek to try and get us into that state. And that's everywhere you look, from advertising to media to music. So really, I think it's about, trying to control our external world as best we can, set that environment up to reinforce a positive outlook. But ultimately, it's through surrender to what is and just coming back into that state of awareness that sits behind it.
So what was your background? Obviously, you left at school at 16. So where was home? What was your sort of environment growing up?
I grew up in Norfolk, which is about 2 hours north of London on the East Coast. And by all accounts, pretty normal. pretty normal. Although that school was a struggle because I really don't like being told what to do. Um, so being told what time to be in the class, having to sit there and do things I didn't want to do, I didn't really get on with, and so I didn't really enjoy school particularly. So the idea of then continuing that trend into employment and doing something for somebody else that I also didn't like didn't resonate with me at all. And so at that stage, I love football, so I went into teaching football, realized that I could get paid for it. And then essentially it was just a continuation of finding things that I loved and trying to find a way to get paid for them. And being told not enjoying being told what to do makes you somewhat unemployable. So the only option is to really create work for yourself at that point.
I mean, that's the truth of entrepreneurship, isn't it? Really, sort of, it's often that's where people go. I mean, if you just look at sort of, some of them amazing people like Jamie Oliver and Richard Branson and everything else, they were dyslexic. I was dyslexic at school, and I'm probably not very good at being told what to do as well. And I think it's a strength and a weakness. I know I think I've said it before, Richard Branson wanted to get rid of dyslexia because it's a negative, but actually it's a real positive because you look at things in a different way.
I think the education system just essentially, as it stands at the moment, is memorization and repetition. And it focuses on one element of what makes a rounded human, right? And so if you are particularly good in that field, then great, but it doesn't always translate into real world success. And I think that very often when we train people to think in that way, we actually prevent success because the most successful entrepreneurs I know are not always the most intelligent. In fact, I think the requirement to go out and be successful in whatever you choose to pursue is a little bit of audacity, which is inconsistent with traditional intelligence as it relates to book smarts and repetition, because you would look at the statistics and say, well, that's unlikely that would work, and therefore I won't do it. Versus actually the belief that is required to go and do it often is outside of what is supposed to be achievable, right? And I think culturally that's reinforced through, especially in the UK, where we don't want to stand out and we don't want to celebrate success. We don't want to be seen as arrogant. We're very mindful about how we appear to others. And so we very often compromise on what we want to do based on what we think is reasonable to do in the eyes of other people.
There's a huge shift going on, isn't there? I think in the next generation coming up, and what we're seeing is seeing a lot of people dissatisfied in the workplace, and in the education system, and obviously with AI ripping through it. I know people keep going on about it, but it is going to change the way things happen, and there's going to be a lot more people doing various income streams, etc. And it's going to be a tough time, and actually they're going to need a lot of help mentally through that, don't you think?
I think there's a big transition coming. I think essentially the infrastructure of how we operate as a collective is going to change drastically. The fabric of how that all comes together, governance, education, finance, like everything is up for disruption. It's likely to be the biggest change of how we live in history, I think. And so it requires us to remain agile, but also to your point around being mentally resilient and to have sovereignty. Ultimately, I think is what it comes down to. It's being able to take care of ourselves and commune and have community and work together. I think that's going to become really, really important. And ensuring that what we do for work is something that is less likely, perhaps, to be disrupted. I think what I'm seeing at the moment is that with more time spent on screens, more time with AI, human centric experiences become ever more valuable. So I actually think, for example, hospitality is going to enter this golden era where we really find these spaces where we can come together, where to be greeted by a human and have an experience with another human is going to have another level of value, perhaps where it's been undervalued in the past.
So when you left school at 16, and then obviously you did the football coaching and things, and then you went into restaurants, didn't you?
Yeah, hospitality. So I went into nightlife first and then into restaurants. And I think again it comes back to the wanting to work with people, wanting to be around people, wanting to be social in the work that I was doing, not wanting to feel chained to a desk or an office. And that's what hospitality gives you, the opportunity to really, be in social spaces with people, to have good conversations and enjoy food. And it was the experience of actually going vegan that I opened my first restaurant. I had a bit of a health breakthrough. Not to say that vegan is particularly the only way to do that, but I think when we lean back into natural foods, whole foods, seasonal foods, organic foods, where we're, really nourishing the body in the right way. And through adopting that diet, I realized there was very few restaurants where you could go and eat day to day that would be able to cater for that and that had that perspective on food. And so that's what I chose to create. And I think the best businesses very often come from scratching our own itch, solving our own problem, and finding that actually lots of people have the same problem that we have.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes you just got to go through those feelings. You've got to sort of understand what it is that you need to do and find that drive. But it takes some time. I mean, you obviously did it quite early on, didn't you?
Mm. I think it's easier to do it when you're young, right? I think the biggest thing that holds people back is the fear of failure. Failure can mean different things to different people. For most people, failure means other people seeing that what I've set out to do, I haven't been able to do, and how that will affect their opinion of me. But I think when you do it young, there's less expectation. And so if you fail, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. They were young, they were whatever. But through failing young, you get to understand that it's not the end of the world, that no one's keeping score. You actually learn a hell of a lot through the experience of failing. And so it encourages you to lean into failing a lot more and view it from a different perspective. I think if you wait too long to have that experience, then it seems like a bigger jump to take that approach. And so, I mean, I've failed more times than I've won for sure, for sure. But it's been a necessary part of the journey. And I think that's where a lot of the learning comes from. I've also seen people that have not failed and their first business has done super well and they've had an amazing experience. They've come out of it and tried to do something else and not been able to because they didn't get the lessons from learning the first time around. So I don't think there's any right way, but certainly the reframe on failure is incredibly powerful.
So it's funny, isn't it? Because people are very much more sort of, particularly at this time of year, going to go look at goal setting and where they're going, and it's who you become with what you do. And I was walking this morning thinking at a slight dilemma over a couple of things, and I was thinking, you know, who do you want to become through what you're doing? What is it that you really want to feel?
Yeah, it's a really powerful book.
I think you were talking on a podcast as well, was about the fact that if you create something for other people, you don't know what other people want, but you know what you want. So create that feeling. I'm work on hugely on my intuition, and sometimes I get very frustrated that I have not done my business plan and I've not organized it and I'm not a planner. But I'm very intuitive in terms of the way I cook, the way I do things, and it's really hard sometimes because actually it's really good to be like that. So one shouldn't criticize one for being like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, to your point around very often people, when they're mapping out these goals, they write out and they say, okay, I need to achieve this. And they'll try and write out a system for that, how they're going to achieve it. But actually, what this process has shown me this year with the hotel has been that it's not how do I do this? It's who do I need to become that's capable? And that has to sit parallel to the things that I need to do for the business. But who I need to become at my current capacity, can I hold a vision of this size based on my current belief system? Do I have the discipline to get up at that time and do that thing? Have I cultivated the self-belief that can face up to the level of rejection that I'm going to receive, right? All these things supersede the strategic daily activities that you would need to do to grow the business. So business in that sense is a spiritual experience, it's a growth experience because you have to evolve as a person to be capable of bringing in and holding and nurturing the vision that you've set out to achieve. And so the goal planning at this time of year is great. I think goals are great when you're not attached to the outcome. I think right intention is probably a better word. But it's, for me at least, about understanding who will I need to become and how do I become that person that is capable of that goal rather than what is the path to achieve the goal. And it's a subtle difference.
It is very subtle, but actually it's so doable because you're actually in control of that. Because it's from you. Control is an interesting word, isn't it? Because I think it's about the fact that you can find your way because you're doing it from the inside, as opposed to looking at from the outside to fix it.
Mm. There's certainly a feeling that comes from stacking wins in pursuit of a larger goal that comes into play as well to give confidence that the wider goal is achieved. And this is kind of, I was chatting with someone earlier actually about running, and he was talking about how, people are running and they're doing it just so they can get the time or the goal, and then it's empty. And I said, well, actually, for me, I look at running as I can use running and meeting a goal in running to build confidence that transcends running into my business, where I don't have confidence in my business because there's so much uncertainty. Running is something that I can control. I know that if I follow the systems that my coach puts in place, I stick to the rules and I show up, then the goal is a formality at that point. Versus in the business, there's so much going on that it's harder to stay on track and it's not straightforward. So the confidence that's gained in the running and then use when I go into my business. And so it's absolutely fine for me that it's all based on a time and I'm doing it for that reason, because there's an ulterior reason that I'm doing it, which is essentially around confidence.
Just to put this all in perspective in terms of the people listening to this podcast as well. So let's just talk about this amazing project that you've got and how it all began, because I think it's like, you're doing something that you almost don't know how to do it, but you know that you there's a trust in knowing that there are things and people out there who can help you do it. But tell us about the project, because I think it's extraordinary.
Yeah, the path is unfolding as we go, but 3 years ago, my business partner and I had this audacious idea, that we were going to build a wellness focused hotel and private members club in the countryside, but didn't have any idea how to get to that end goal. So what we started to do was document it on social media and talk about the vision that we wanted to create and invite people to collaborate with us and help us. And what's transpired today is that we have a 55-acre country estate in West Sussex that is under construction that will open next summer. And essentially it's a hotel and members club with well-being at the core. And what that means and how that translates into the experience is that from an architectural perspective, the house is designed as an extension of the human nervous system. So it regulates with the human body, it's natural materials, it's air, water, light, frequencies, etc. The amenities on offer go from ancient modalities, studio spaces, woodland, sauna, ice, natural pool, farm, through to the more modern tech solutions, gyms, longevity clinic, epigenetic restaurant. So correlated with the individual's genetic profile is the menu that they see. And it functions as a private members club and as a hotel. And essentially, it is the space that I wish existed. It's alcohol free. It's a social space rather than a retreat or a clinic. It's in close proximity to London, so it's very accessible. But it also has a local populace that can use it. And it's set on this estate that is mostly woodland, which is incredible. So yeah, we're building our dream business, basically.
Oh wow, it's almost like it's almost like you've got a pot here and you're putting everything that you've ever dreamed of in it, and giving
Basically,
it out for other people.
yeah, basically.
And I think it's taken you a long time to find this property, hasn't it? It's not come quickly.
You know, again, coming back to having to become the person that's capable. I certainly wasn't at the start. And that's part of the journey. If it was very easy and would have all unfolded perfectly and on time and would have no resistance, then I don't think it would feel the same as it feels now. So no, it hasn't been easy. We've been through, I think this is the fourth property that we've tried to do this in. We've had offers where deals fall through. We've had planning not approved. We've had investors pull out. We've had all sorts happen on the journey, but it's really trained us to hold the vision. And over that period of time, what's happened is we've been able to build a larger audience, been able to bring in more people that are better suited. And so it's been a case of having to kind of sit in the discomfort of not knowing, and zoom out and take a longer term view on things, and flow and not force it. You can only do so much. There's an element of there's a dance between making it happen and surrender, which is not always easy to do. But to your point around intuition, that's where you really have to listen.
It's funny because I've been in the fundraising world for many years, and I've been in the events world, and I've often said to people the key thing for me is I've had to sell fresh air. This is the way I've always said it. So you have this vision, and you see it, and I mean, so for example, so I remember when we were doing this carol concert, and we thought, oh, we'll do it in Salisbury Cathedral, and it was the most beautiful concert, and we had the most incredible speakers there, and we sold out, and I lit it, and it was just magical. But when you first start doing it, well, how am I going to get 1,200-1,400 people into a cathedral, and how am I going to do that? And that's just an event. And then I remember doing another very big project where we raised 15.7 million up at the National Memorial Arboretum, and I remember thinking, how on earth are we going to do it? And I used to go, and I sort of remembered walking around the square with our patron, um, and seeing it is done, and it's almost having a knowing. And I think that's the world I've been in has taught me to trust.
Mm. So difficult to do though, right? This again, it comes back to education. We spoke about education, where we're not taught how to do that. And we are hardwired genetically for pessimism because that's what's kept us alive, right? We're pessimistic because it stops us from encountering danger. But the only way is to believe it before it happens. And I had this conversation in Dubai the other day. We were sat in a high rise looking out over Dubai, and it was three kind of entrepreneurs. One of my friends just raised 240 million for his company. Another friend has had an exit recently, and we were sitting with these guys, very inspiring. And we were kind of saying, if you look out over Dubai, and 50 years ago, this was just a vision in someone's head, and look at the scale of it now. And everything starts like that. Everything starts like that. And in order for anyone else to believe it, you first have to believe it with conviction.
Absolutely. And what I want to go back to a little bit is the fact that all these things that are coming into place, because I think that you and I will both agree that the wellness industry and health has grown exponentially, and it is growing. It will continue to grow. But I think there's an awful lot of noise out there. There's a lot of confusion about what's going on and how to do things, because again, it goes back to actually what might be good for you is not necessarily good for me. So we have to understand, we have to be inspired by people, and then have to go and try it and see what works and what doesn't work. Does cold therapy work for you? Well, it works brilliantly for me, but it doesn't work for everybody. Um, so, so all these things you're putting in place. And I think it's also not to be stressed by this whole movement of wellness as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's coming back to basics. All of these things that you see online that are the 1%, the 0.5% upsides, peptides, stem cells, hyperbaric oxygen, great. You know, great if you have a baseline of health from which you can it's like having a perfectly working car and then revving the engine and letting it go. But if you've got an oil leak, a flat tire, an exhaust doesn't work properly, and you then try and do that, it's not going to work. And the basics are what make up the majority of it, right? It's are you managing stress? Are you sleeping enough so your body can repair? Are you putting nutritious food into the body so that you have an energy source? Are you hydrating well? Do you have purpose? Do you have connection, relationships, community? These things are foundational and supersede anything else.
Yeah.
Movement, exercise, this is foundational. On top of that, you then think about all of these additional hacks, if you like, but not until those foundations are in place. And I think we've been trained to look for the shortcuts, but there are no shortcuts.
Yeah.
This is again why I love the ultra running. It's like you can't turn up on the start line to a 100-kilometer race and wing it. It doesn't work. It only works if you put the work in. And you also almost have to earn the right to gain the benefit from doing these more advanced treatments a lot of the time by having the foundational health in place first and foremost. There is no shortcuts. It's hard. We've created a culture almost. We want to tell everyone, oh, no, it's okay. It's easy. No, it's hard. It's hard. Certain things are hard. You have to do it. You have to do the work. If you're overweight, you're obese and you're having health issues as a result, there is no shortcut. The GLP-1s, fine, but you've not trained the behavior to do that. So when you come off them, you go back to the same thing. It's the shortcuts are exactly that. They're a shortcut, but it's really about understanding the foundations. And most of those foundations are very cheap or free. Very cheap or free. You can get morning sunlight, you can do breath work, you can walk 10,000 steps, you can sleep 8 hours, you can drink enough water. All this stuff, you go for a run, like all this stuff is free. You don't need to have tons of money to do it.
No. So tell me, who's going to be, so it's a membership club. So who's your sort of target audience? Who's going to be the members of this sort of club? What sort of people are they?
Anyone that prioritizes their health and well-being and wants to be around people that have the same vision for their life. That is it. I mean, the kind of person that goes into a cafe and asks if the eggs are organic, right? It's like people that care, like they care about their health and they want to be around other people that do as well. And people that are interested in learning more about it and spending time in those spaces. We're not saying that you have to be sober to come. We're not saying that you have to be a health freak or a fitness guru. It's for anybody that has an intention around living a healthier life and wants to be around people that share the same vision. And I think their communities essentially are formed of people that have a shared set of values and a shared vision for their life. But this is what it is. It's a community of people.
And how did you find all the people who've come together to help you deliver this in terms of the treatments and all even the building of it?
Put it out there and they'll come. That's it. Tell the story. I mean, people resonate with stories, and again, it's been like we've just told it how it is. There's been no kind of big kind of marketing fluff. There's no been kind of us trying to sell anything at this point. It's just been, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is why we think it matters. And people that resonate with that message have come to us. It's been exclusively people that have come to us that we've ended up working with, and people that are drawn to the project, that share the same beliefs that we do, have been the best fit for it. I think that's important. The intentionality in what we do. It's anyone can add. Any hotel can add a sauna and an ice bath, or add a gym, or add a yoga class, or add a certain menu. But the intention behind it and the understanding behind it is the difference, I think.
There's a great book. I remember doing it for my A level. Harold Pinter, The Caretaker, and it was saying that they invited people round, and I think that they produced some crisps or something. And someone said, "Well, that just shows you haven't taken any care. You're not looking after your guests." It's really funny, isn't it? How something, I remember that very clearly. It was many years ago. That actually it's about how you make people feel. Because you can eat the best food, but if the energy is not there or the feeling's not there, it's not going to have the same effect on your body as if as if it's energetically produced, it's done with love, it's all this stuff, all the spiritual stuff behind it.
The state is also the states that you're in when you have that experience, right? So we know that if you could eat the most nutritious food in the world, but if you're in a highly stressed state, you're not aware of the experience. Maybe you're distracted by your phone, or you're mindlessly just chewing away. You can't absorb the same level of nutrients as if you are aware, calm, nervous system is regulated, and you're then digesting. It's a completely different experience with the food. And a good test of that is being able to identify texture and flavor as you eat, being able to slow down and not be aware of anything else other than the experience of eating the food when you eat, as opposed to, arriving stressed, in a rush, eating on the go. It's almost pointless eating the food at that point. You're just getting your body to perform an energetically um, intensive experience without deriving the benefit from it.
So obviously, all those people have come together to help you build this dream, and but also the funding has been extraordinary, hasn't it? Because it's been very much done on social media.
Yeah, I mean, as you all know from fundraising, traditionally the way of doing this, and I've done it a few times before, is that you will go out to institutionals, angel investors, etc., professionals, and you will pitch them to invest in your business on the basis of realizing a future return. What's been different this time around is that we announced that we were raising money on social media, and the first 30% of the funding was people just contacting us saying, "Hey, I'd love to invest." And the profile of those investors were people who perhaps wouldn't consider themselves investors normally, but people who, if they were able to do what we're doing, each if they had the time, the resource, the know-how, whatever, would be doing exactly this. So for them, it's a way for them to do it through us. Typically, it's been what that's looked like. And so we've now raised close to £5 million, mostly from social media, um, which which has been amazing. And some incredible people that have been really helpful just beyond simply putting the money in. They've been really contributing in terms of ideas and network and everything else. So it's been an amazing experience. And I think being able to do that because we've taken the approach of building it with that audience. They've been involved from very, very early on.
Well, that's how I heard about it when you were explaining the whole thing. So I want to ask you. This might be a personal question. So where did all your tattoos come from? Because obviously, I think you said in one of your podcasts, are you going to have a tattoo parlor at the or not parlor, but a tattoo place at your hotel?
Yeah, people were getting very. I mean, again, like this speaks to the thing about the wellness space, right? It's like, do we have to be the perfect embodiment of wellness to do anything in this space? And I've been called out quite a lot on social media and saying, "How can you talk about health if you're tattooed?" And so yeah, where did the tattoos come from? I think just growing up, my dad had tattoos, and my some of my family did, and just explaining it, it begins with a sense of expression and capturing a moment in time, perhaps a feeling that you have at that particular time, and it just becomes something that you just follow, I suppose, and it's ended up being being quite excessive at this point. But yeah, I don't really know where it comes from, if
No,
I'm
but
honest.
I think it's right because so when I don't know. I suppose people sort of see you being healthy and doing things, but then you might do something else, and or something that's a little bit left field or something, and you just say, it's not all about that because it's just who I am. Does that make sense? So it's yeah. Well, I had to ask it because I know it's been asked asked you.
Yeah, no, look, I think I so what the one might say the negative implications of tattooing is ink in the skin potentially being a toxin, and the body having to fight to push toxins out of the body. Some concern around heavy metals, perhaps, but I've had my heavy metals levels tested. I don't have high levels of any heavy metal. Sauna is super effective as a detox protocol, and I think we've all got something that we do that maybe isn't perfectly healthy. There may be the odd thing. I think if you're doing the right thing 90% of the time, you're in a good place. Nobody wants to be the lonely biohacker that has everything perfectly sanitized, but then doesn't actually go out and experience the world. So, yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I think that anyone that's getting upset online and leaving comments is arguably sat in a worse state than I'm in by being in the state to leave that comment in the first place. So, but yeah, it doesn't worry me.
There's wish I could remember which podcast it was on. She was talking about fasting and bringing the insulin levels down, and it was all about eating sardines. And I think this it was 100 days. Someone ate sardines for 100 days. Oh my goodness, her health was through the roof. And the question was, "But aren't sardines in a tin and there are microplastics?" And she goes, "But they're tiny. It just you shouldn't lose sleep over that." And I think this is where things are so important that we don't look at all these things that are out there and say, I can't do this, I can't do that, I won't do that, I won't do that. Because you rightly say, you're not going to live a life. And actually, if you're concerned about it, go and get them tested. It's not hard to get heavy metals tested in your body
Yeah,
or
context is
plastics.
everything. Con- Context is everything, right? It's like, what's the worst of two evils? You're really thirsty, you're dehydrated. There's a water bottle, but it's plastic. Are you going to drink it? Of course. I mean, which one's worse, right? It's very rarely is it black and white. I think it comes back to foundations, 90-10, 80-20 principle in terms of doing the right thing, doing the best you can, and not losing sleep over it. I think is the best approach.
A couple of things I want to cover. One is all your amazing sport and ultra marathons that you've done. How many have you done? What have you done really?
Oh, how many did that? I've kind of lost count. So done first. Well, an ultra marathon is technically anything over a marathon, but I don't really think 50K counts, if I'm honest, as an ultra marathon. So done most recently, I did a 24-hour race in the desert in Saudi Arabia, around an 8 kilometer loop, around 133K around that one. Did 7 days, 7 ultra marathons, 7 Emirates, 350K. I've done 105K through the mountains in Tuscany, done 100K through the countryside in Norfolk. Yeah, I've done a few. And I think how I got into it actually was during COVID and the stress of managing businesses and big teams through that period. The thing that I found that was most effective for me to kind of have thinking time and move was to get out and go on very long runs. And then the distance just increased, and I found that it was a period of kind of reflection and time alone, and so just lent into it. And since then, it's become a bit of a hobby.
Do you take any supplements?
I do, but I supplement according to my blood test results. So um, I do a blood test every 6 months, and then I look at what level my functional doctor interprets that and looks at what's potentially low, what maybe could require supplementation or just a change in diet. And then there's supplements that I take outside of those everyday supplements, creatine, shilajit, um, but mostly it's based on my blood levels, and then just eating a good diet. Again, supplements are like the nice extra. I have been taking peptides because the amount of volume I've been doing in the running, um, they've really helped to speed up recovery. And I had leaky gut last year from overtraining, and taking peptide injections really helped with the leaky gut.
How did you get into functional medicine?
I met a doctor, and he was telling me about his clinic, Dr. E, shout out Dr. E, and invited me in to have a look around, have a meeting with him. So I was like, cool, let's do it. I've never done a blood test. And the first one came back. I felt great. I was like 28. I was like, I feel great. I'm whole food, vegan, alkaline. I don't rarely drink. My blood results are going to be perfect. And it came back that I had very low stomach acid, which as a result meant that I wasn't converting nutrients from the food that I was eating. And downstream of that, I was low in like 8 different key nutrients. And so he gave me a list of supplements to take. And within 8 weeks, I felt way better than I could ever imagine feeling. So I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. And so I've literally been working with him ever since. It was about 6 years ago. And I'm still working with him now on an ongoing basis. And I feel genuinely feel better at 35 than I felt at 25, 22. Um, and that's reflected in the times that I'm running kind of competitively with the running, but also just how I feel day to day and energy levels as well.
That's incredible, isn't it? I think it is interesting because so many people don't know what to take. There's so much advertising, there's so many supplements out there, and it is, again, it comes back to asking, if you're not feeling great, who can help you? Where do you go with it? And probably not to experiment.
The problem is it can go the other way. So what people don't realize is that, let's say that you're taking, I had this with my mum, for example. I got her a blood test and she went, oh, my magnesium's come back high. And I was like, have you been supplementing it? She said, yeah, I've been supplementing it for years. And so she'd been supplementing magnesium because she heard on a podcast that you need to take magnesium. But through supplementing magnesium, her levels were too high. And the impact on the body is that you then have a waste product that the body needs to get rid of, or it starts balancing other micronutrients. Right. So there's a risk of supplementing where it isn't required. And I think we're seeing this a lot at the moment with NAD. NAD is a hot topic. Everyone's injecting NAD plus. I would argue that a vast majority of people that are taking NAD plus do not have low levels of NAD and therefore don't need it. And if you're taking NAD plus when you don't need it, you're creating a waste product that the body then has to get rid of, which is putting additional stress on the body. So I think any supplement, especially with hormone regulating peptides that people are now taking, should really get a blood test and really work with somebody that understands these things. Supplements that you don't necessarily need to get a blood test to take. Creatine's good. I think everyone should take a low dose of creatine. It's 5 to 10 grams, great. A protein powder if you don't get enough protein, perhaps. And you have adaptogens that can be helpful as well. But outside of that, if you're supplementing key micronutrients, you should really understand what your levels are before you start adding additional stuff in.
What is the most exciting thing that you're bringing? You've got all these treatments coming into this uh, membership club and Long Lane, and you must have come across some quite new concepts too, because there's so much happening, isn't there?
There are a lot of new concepts, but again, it comes back to what are the basics? What are the basics? Honestly, thing I'm most excited about is re-establishing ritual practice around these amenities and processes. And what I mean by
What
that
does that
is,
mean? Yeah.
how do you give meaning to an experience that can otherwise become something monotonous that you go through the motions and do? So I'll give you an example. Every morning at sunrise, we gather at the natural pool. We stand feet in the soil. We do 3 rounds of breath. We go into the water together. And the first 5 minutes, we say nothing. After 5 minutes, we let out a big shout, shake, we move, we get out. We go and sit in the sauna together. We talk about our day. We come out, we have our warm cacao, and we go about our day. That's a ritual. That's a process that we go through together that grounds us in the experience that we're having. That's a system that I can follow to be connected to the experience, and it gives meaning to the experience. Versus me just turning up to the pool, getting in for a minute, doing my breath, going through the motions. And we apply this ritual to everything that we do. And if you look across culture, and we've had it historically in our own culture, ritualistic practice is how we give meaning to everyday things. Right. So I think there's again, thinking about intention behind the way things are used versus simply going to use the thing. Right. It's a guidance system. It gives meaning to it. But outside of that, I'm really excited about having a restaurant that has a farm connected to it. So the food you're eating is hyper local, hyper fresh. But then to add the science to it in terms of how do we improve the efficacy of what we're doing, all of our members go through a DNA methylation test when they join, and the menu that they see in the restaurant is based on their individual genetic profile. So they will see dishes that correlate with their individual genetics and which are best suited for them. And so this is how we move towards, and we'll obviously advance this over time, a truly personalized approach to nutrition. Because as you said at the start, we're all different. A dish that's going to be amazing for you may be terrible for me. Time of the
Yes.
year, male, female, time of the cycle, age, other things going on in your life or that day, that whatever, all of these things have an impact. So it's taking and begin with one data point, which is genetic profile, but then over time being able to amalgamate different data points to inform what's best for that individual, not just within food, but within the whole experience. And I'm excited to have a space where we can integrate that data and you actually use it day to day. Because the challenge around a lot of the diagnostics is that people go and get a blood test and then they don't have a right interpretation, or they do have an interpretation, but then they order the supplements and don't take them, and that data just doesn't get used. What we're bringing
Yeah.
in is you could do the diagnostics and you have the wearable and everything else, and that data is amalgamated together, and then there's a journey that's proposed based on your state that day, that week, for how you then take that data and use it to improve your experience of the space.
So obviously it's going to be a hotel and membership club. So how do you see, is it just going to be for members only, or can people book in as a hotel? And how many people are you going to be able to have in the hotel at any one time?
Yeah, so it's members only day to day, but you can book a hotel room as a member of the public. You don't need to be a member to book a hotel room. And you also don't need to be a member to visit the restaurant. So the restaurant and the farm shop is open to the public, hotels open to the public. Members do get a discount on the hotel if they want to stay, but the hotel is public. There's 30 bedrooms in the hotel in phase one. 20 of those are rooms in the house, and 10 of those are cabins in the forest.
And they are going to have all sorts of amazing things, aren't they? Enclosed in the walls, the red light therapy, so high tech.
Exactly. So, how do we create the optimal sleeping environment, right? When we think about materials, air quality, fabrics, light, all of those things that feed into creating the optimal sleep environment that is again personalized, right? So thermoregulated mattress so that it responds to your body temperature through the night, similar to the light in the room. And I think it's been so much fun trying to figure out how do we create the absolute optimal sleeping environment. And outside of that, it's understanding that this space is evolving so quickly. The technology we have today we didn't have 5 years ago. Probably in the next 2 years with AI, it's going to expand even faster. So this is what it looks like today, but what we're really excited about is what it can look like in the near future.
What technology wasn't around before,
Well,
5 years
even
ago?
so far as look at just how technology has been democratized. A DNA methylation test is an example, right? That test 10 years ago was probably millions, hundreds of thousands of pounds to get that test. It didn't exist at scale. Now you can get them for 250, £300. Even 8 Sleep with the thermoregulated mattress, they've only been around for 3 or 4 years at this point. So it's just really exciting. Even peptides I spoke about, peptides now being available to the public 5 years ago wasn't really a thing. It's only the last 3 years that you've been able to get peptides, and that's still very few people that are using those. So I think just the exciting thing is just how quickly the space is progressing. Peptides, I honestly think, are probably one of the biggest medical breakthroughs in the last 50 years. They're just incredible.
Yeah, they are incredible. My gosh, these are going to be. I mean, firstly, I'm thinking when I become a member, not if, no, when I become a member, I won't want to leave this space. And what happens when I go back to not having all the things at home? And then how are you going to roll this out? Are you going to have several of these hotels, membership clubs, and what's the vision?
Yeah, I mean, the dream would be to have multiple locations globally, right? So different places across the world. Residencies would be a dream, to build homes like this as well. And then just to keep improving what we're doing and just help people to live a healthier life and build communities of people where they can feel at home. But yeah, practically, it's a rollout. I think get this one full focus on the first one. Proof of concept, stabilize the first one, get it working, figure it out, and then onto the second one.
It's so cool. One area we haven't discussed before we finish is you are an actual angel investor, and I know you've invested in Dirty and a couple of others. So, what is it that you look at when you're looking at investing in a company?
Founders first and foremost, founders and the team. An idea that I would use, a product relating to an idea that I would use myself. And a sector that's growing, that's almost future proof in some respects. So first and foremost, it's the team. It's really about the team. Great team, poor idea. They'll pivot, they'll adapt. Poor team, great idea. Less able to.
And do you just invest in health products, wellness products? Is that where you really sit?
Pretty much. I mean, hospitality I've invested in as well. Some sports stuff I've invested in as well. But typically stuff that I would use, or that, if it's going to take up headspace, even if it's a small amount of headspace. So it has to be something that I care about. And I feel like when you're buying something or when you're investing in something, you're voting, right? You're voting for the kind of world that you want to exist. So if I'm going to put cash into something and support something, it has to be something that I actually think makes a positive impact. Um, so yeah, health and wellness, uh, mostly at this point.
And when did you start doing that? How long ago did you start
Oh,
investing?
2016 probably. First one, yeah, 2016.
Right, so it's a long time,
Long
long
time.
time.
Yeah, almost 10
So
years.
what has been the secret? You've had 16. You were in the sports world. You then went into the nightclubs. You then went into the restaurants, and I think it was pretty tough during COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was the just
Hospitality. I mean,
yeah, it was awful. I mean, personally, it was a period of really not knowing if I would come out of it because I was hugely over leveraged. I had multiple restaurants, a warehouse, all with personal guarantees against them in my name. And so, I mean, because we weren't legally allowed to trade on one hand, but because I had a guarantee on the other hand, landlords could charge me full price rent and enforce it against me as an individual, not the company. But simultaneously, I wasn't able to generate any revenue from those businesses legally. So at the end of COVID, I was hundreds of thousands of pounds in debt personally, because of the agreements that I'd made prior to COVID. And obviously, no one expected COVID to happen. So having to navigate that on the other side of COVID and figure that out was incredibly stressful. It was losing almost everything. It was starting again. It was all of the pressure and fear and judgment and very public failure because at that point I built a lot of these businesses in the public eye. So yeah, big lesson for sure.
that's huge. I mean, obviously it happened. A lot of people went through that as well. But I mean, the stress of that, and then you're doing this. I think that's so exciting. I think it's so exciting. Before we go, I always ask our guests to leave three things for our listeners that they feel is very important in their life. I believe in the power of three.
The first thing is coming full circle on what we spoke about first, and it's that when you understand that what we are is awareness, it's not a title, a job, an identity, it's simply awareness, everything becomes a lot easier. And you can always return to that at any point. And there's a knowing, there's a mantra of I am awareness. You can say I'm peaceful awareness, I'm loving awareness, whatever that is. Dropping back into that is a superpower. Um, I would also say that the most transformative thing I've picked up this year and being consistent with is journaling. And that for me has been like taking all of the craziness up here and putting it onto a page. That's been really transformational. And I think the last thing is finding other finds. You know, you can do all this work with yourself, but ultimately it's meaningless unless you're with other people. And relationships and community is probably the most important thing that we can
Community.
have. So yeah, those. I mean, it sounds cliche because
Yeah, I love those.
it's cliche, but it kind of it works, you know.
It's not cliched at all, and I love that. I love the as I say, the awareness, and I think community is so important, and I think it's you're attracted to, as you move through your life, you're attracted to different people, and people come in and out of your life, and there's no wrong or right with it. It is just where where you need to go in this world and this life, really, isn't it? So and it's lovely to be able to, certainly I think that actually just doing the podcast and doing the events that I do and all the work that I do, I've come across so many amazing people, and I just be able to have a conversation with you today, to be able to take that out to our listeners, to know what you're doing. I just think it's inspirational and I love it, and I cannot wait to see it all evolve in 2026. I know it's going to be a long one for you, but really excited. Where can people find you, first of all, because we'll put them in the show notes, and also, the opening for this, for Long Lane, etc. How can we find out all about it?
Yeah, so pretty Instagram's the easiest place, and then for Long Lane, it's longlane.co.uk. Everything's on there. You can sign up. You can be the first to know, and then we should do the next one at Long Lane in person. That would be great.
That would be so much fun. Yes, I do a few in studios, but actually it's nice. It doesn't take up too much time, and it's just lovely. Louie, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and it's been so lovely. Considering we don't know each other, it's been so lovely to get to know you, and I'm sure our paths are going to cross many times in the future.
No, you too. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.